So thank you everyone first for coming to our talk. We're going to give a quick overview what this is about. It's basically how to get into security if you're already an IT professional or if you're not even IT yet. This is a really good talk for that. We're going to be covering a lot of resources, not just in the realm of stuff that'll help you in the job interview, but also the resources that'll help you kind of land that first job. Kind of the technical resources, including like the social networking side of it as well, the hard and the soft skills, and much, much more. So with that, I'll go over who I am. I'm Tommy, Tommy Dew. I'm a security consultant at Rapid7. I started in IT at the age of 16, and since then I've been breaking stuff. Have a background at A&M. So we'll cover some more of this stuff later on, but also certifications, and I'm also a former blue teamer, internal security. I've since made the transition to offensive security, and I think that about covers my side of it.
So I'm Gisela, and I first started getting into computers when I was 8. I was always curious in seeing how things worked, and I would take them apart. And sometimes I was able to put them back together, not always though. So I have a whole bunch of circuit cards under my bed that I just never really fixed. But so I was always just curious on seeing how things worked, and I knew I wanted to be a developer because I like video games and I wanted to do my own video games and make my own software. And it was also kind of different for me growing up, being a girl in IT or just in general liking computers. It was kind of frowned upon sometimes, but it's just something you had to work through. And yeah.
Awesome. All right, I'm also going to take my my stealthy 3M cover off of this laptop. All right, some education. So I attended Texas A&M University. I was actually a political science major, wanted to be a lawyer. Horrible idea. Glad I didn't do that because I fell in love with my current profession. But I worked on several campaigns, and it was a lot of fun. But eventually I got into security, and my certifications, I have the GCAH, that's the Certified Incident Handling Certification through SANS, also the CompTIA Network Plus. Working towards my GPIN, which is Offensive Security Nature Certification through SANS, and also the OSCP. So I think these kind of certifications really help solidify, the knowledge of my security career. But we'll have another section on certs to cover a little more about all of them later on.
Okay, so I went to the University of Texas at Bronzeville, and I did study computer science. I was a little unsure about computer science, mostly because I wanted to do robotics or at least computer engineering to get a little bit of electrical background. But they had computer science, so I took computer science. It was, like I said before, it was a little tough because there were only like 2 girls in the whole computer science degree. But I mean, we made it work, and you kind of sometimes have to show, like, prove to yourself and prove to others that you're good enough to be there. I have my CompTIA Security Plus, which we'll talk about later, and I'm studying for the OSCP.
Awesome. So hopefully with this kind of work experience side, y'all kind of see the transition and path that we've came to be where we are today. Like I mentioned earlier, I started in tech at the age of 16, and even before that, it's kind of like if you race cars, you have to learn how to work on them and maintain them. I did the same thing with computers, with gaming at a young age. And then, at age 16, when I started out as a student tech at A&M, that was kind of the transition from the age of like analog to digital. So we were installing Ethernet cards, and that was the pre-Service Pack 1 days on Windows XP. So lots of fun times with worms and viruses, such as like Blaster or Code Red at the time. So at a young age, I also was involved in high school. They had like a 2-hour program to basically do all sides of hardware and software, like junior, senior year. So I got a lot of experience that way early on. And then I eventually transitioned from that student worker role into a NOC analyst role. So if you're not familiar with what a NOC is, it's just a network operations center. And I did that at A&M, and it was kind of like a nerve center basically for networking issues and making sure that there's uptime and resolving those issues. So from there, I really picked up a lot of my Bash Linux experience, and also a lot of my programming experience there as well. Because when you're in an understaffed program, you have to learn to automate a lot of stuff. And so moving on from that, I then went into our internal security department at A&M, where I first came in. And really, some of the first things that you do in a security department in that type of big university environment, going to be a lot of log parsing, log analysis, and analyzing packet captures. So that gave me a lot of really substantial experience, cutting my teeth on a lot of security topics by doing that. I eventually transitioned to doing incident response. And the incident response side of it really, I guess, gave me a perspective of what attackers were doing on networks. And it was super useful to take those previous skills and transitioned into what I do now in offense. And in the offense side of things, I'm basically a security consultant like Gisela here. And we're doing penetration testing for clients. So a penetration tester is someone that will simulate real-world attacks on clients. So, yeah.
Well, like I said, I started with technical support, and I was doing everything from installing voice over IP phones to networking, and also getting phone calls, and it's like, hey, my screen is upside down. I pressed something, and I don't know what I did. So I got all those kind of fun phone calls. But then I went to database administrator for the university. And I was doing some database and integrating with ASP.NET and just doing a web application. But after I finished college, I moved to Austin. I wanted to get a developer job, but the whole catch-22. So I was like, well, I'll go in QA, and then from there I'll jump into development. But I found out that I was pretty good at quality assurance, just breaking things, and it was more fun sometimes than building them. But so it's just breaking things, and I figured a lot of vulnerabilities, and I kind of started liking it, and I stayed with it for 6 years. But then after a while, I kind of started getting a little bored of it, too repetitive. And my husband told me that I should follow my passion, which has always been security, but when I was growing up, it wasn't really a career. So I decided to follow that, and I started studying for the CompTIA Security Plus, and then a little bit short after that, I got into Rapid7, which is a really great company to work for if you're doing like beginner entry level. They have different programs. Well, we'll come up to that a little bit later. Yeah.
Getting excited about that.
Okay, so why are you interested? Why are you here? What drives you? What this kind of career requires you to always keep learning new stuff. It's not just like you get the job and that's it, I'm done. There's always new things coming up. So you have to have passion, because without passion, you're going to give up and you're not going to want to do this anymore. You're like, well, I feel like I'm always having to read and study and stuff, and I want to do something else. So you kind of need this to be in the security field.
All right, so I think to kind of transition what Gisela mentioned with passion is certainly something that's going to be a driver for all of the kind of things I'm going to list now. And we were talking about this and what we think that really makes a good security professional and security analyst, which is kind of a generalist term in our industry, are really three kind of technical areas that we think are really, they really solidify that foundation that you need in a lot of these positions. First and foremost, networking. Learn TCP/IP. It will open so many doors for you, and it's something near and dear to me because that is the kind of like large background that I came from. It really gives you that understanding of how things not just move from A to B, but also to XYZ, like around the entire world. So having a solid understanding of networking is really great. Operating systems, so preferably, there's Linux and Windows, preferably become a master of at least one of those. That's really going to, I guess, help you understand certain environments that you're going to be in with either your clients or the company that you work for. And then the third section that I think that really helps have a proficiency would be scripting. And you don't need to be a full-blown developer, but that certainly helps to come from a development background or to be interested in that. But just having an idea of scripting Something like an interpreted language like Python is very useful. And if you're going to be working in Windows environment or you prefer that, PowerShell, of course, is incredibly useful. So really with those three technical, I guess, foundations, those really set you up to, with the first you have to build it, then break it mentality in security. And you can continue being a builder too if you want. That's totally awesome. But what really drives all three of those and what keeps you interested in it is the idea of having that passion and continuous learning all the time. Security is not a field that like we go home at 5 and we're just like hands off, I'm done. You always have to be learning, always have to be hacking, always have to be continually bettering yourself. It's such a dynamic field and things change all the time. Having that background will just take you pretty far. And now we go into security positions. So in security, they borrowed a lot of terms from the military, such as red teaming and blue teaming, and we kind of help identify in this talk a lot of different security positions based off that kind of coloring system. And then they even have something called purple teaming, which we'll get to here in a second. So for where I came from was the blue team, and ignore the green lightsabers. I had added in there anyways because the Yoda is cool. I don't know about the other guy, who he is. So for the blue team, this is really, I think it's from doing both sides of the jobs and hearing what other people have done, it really is sometimes the harder job because you're always under attack. You don't have that type of first strike ability. You're always going to be on the defense. So within blue team, within defense security jobs, you'll usually be working on an internal security team, so under the title of like a security analyst. And kind of like what I mentioned earlier, what I was doing, you're going to do a lot of times log parsing, looking to kind of build, maybe you have the IDS, a security product that gave you an alert. You may have to go track down in the logs and see what happened from start to finish. Maybe confirm if there was a breach or an attack on your network. And from there, you also can do incident response, where you're going to have to go out and kind of like put fires out for a company, or for either your internal company, or you can do a consulting realm of that as well. So, and on top of that, there's also people that do reverse engineering of malicious software. Usually that title will just be like a malware analyst. They can have them in-house sometimes, or sometimes you can even write like signatures for security products as well. And you can be a security researcher on that side. But yeah, so blue team defense, where I came from, I really like it. However, I switched over to the red team recently. And this is my passion, what I love. And with red teaming, you're going to also have sometimes internal red teams, and they'll just be a group of penetration testers that will attack their own company and kind of, I guess, help sharpen, iron sharpens iron idea. They're basically going to start helping the defense get better by continually attacking them. Because if you only have maybe one incident or no incidents at all a year, you really don't get that real world experience. You can also do consulting, like what we do as penetration testers. So yeah, we'll basically come in and attack a network and kind of to demonstrate that real world threat, whether it be through something like social engineering, where maybe you're sending phishing emails to people to try to get them to click on it, or even physical assessments where you're going to come in and maybe have to pick some locks, sneak into a company, do tailgating, clone badges, stuff like that. So it's really simulating some of these attacks that do happen to companies. You can also be a security researcher, and kind of the manner that people reverse malware. You can also do security research to try to find vulnerabilities and exploits and develop those. Also for Rapid7, like we develop for Metasploit. So there are people that's all they do, or develop for these offensive security tools. And so another thing that we wanted to talk about too are certifications that can help you in the security realm to get better. So some of the certifications that I mentioned, I'm wearing my SANS shirt today too. But for SANS, I can't say how awesome they are any more than they speak for themselves. They have the course that really helped me in SANS to kind of, I guess, get that mindset of what attackers are doing was the SANS 504 incident handling course. Was super useful. And then also took SANS 560, which is the offensive security course. But SANS is awesome, but they can be a little bit pricey. So if your employer can't pay for it, or you can't yourself, you can also do like a work study program. It's about $1,200, but you basically TA for the course for a week. And yeah, SANS is super awesome stuff. And then there's also offensive security, which covers the OSCP, and that's very much a penetration tester's certification, and it really helps to do very practical real world experience and very hands-on labs that you can then demonstrate, hey, I can do this too.
And like I was previously talking about, I have the Security Plus, which is a pretty much entry-level security certification. It's not as expensive as the OSCP or even the CEH, but it's a great certification to get your feet wet. It's not hands-on, so it's more of theory, like physical, like locks and stuff like that. But it's also this disaster recovery plan, and just kind of it's like has a management section and kind of a little bit of the offensive side and defensive. But it's a good certification to kind of get your feet wet. And then there's also the CEH, which is the EC Council, and that one is a good certification just to get a little bit of, it's a little bit more hands-on the Security Plus, but it's a good way to learn the tools that you use for doing penetration testing. Something that we do want to bring up is not all companies require certifications, and you kind of want to just research the company that, or the kind of job that you want, and see if they require certifications. I personally think they are worth it. Sometimes it's just a little checkbox that HR needs to just check off so you can get it further into the interview process. But they are expensive, so try to consider what your goals are. Don't try to get all the certifications, because then it kind of looks like you're not really like focused and you just want to learn everything. And that could be a bad thing sometimes. But yeah, so definitely recommend them. The one that a lot of, if you want to go into penetration testing, OSCP is the standard in most of them. So you can always try to get something like that.
Oh, hold on. One more thing too. So we also kind of should have mentioned the CompTIA. The Networking Plus one is really good too, and one that we really like because it's not just the certification, but also helps open doors of concepts that you may not have been introduced to through other formal education or experience. And so yeah, the Networking Plus for me, and I think really helps solidify, oh, there are these really cool concepts like TCP/IP, and yeah. So, and they're not that expensive either. So it's something that you can totally do on your own. All right, so we'll cover InfoSec meetups. So another good way to get security experience is also to do the social aspect of it. And one thing that we're kind of fortunate here in Austin to have are a lot of awesome meetups. And if you're not from Austin, there are other great meetups too that will usually happen through some of these organizations. Something that's near and dear to our hearts is AHA, the Austin Hacking Association. They've been known to go by a few other names associated with that, but it's here in Austin at the end of every month. And basically what they cover are 10-minute talks, but everything that's spoken inside that talk stays within there and can't be spoken outside of it. But what's really cool about that is you'll see sometimes content that will be at a presentation nationally or locally coming up. So yeah, AHA is a totally great way to meet some great hackers. If it's a little intimidating crowd sometimes, so if you're not ready for that, there's also 2600 meetings from the 2600 magazine, and those are like at Whole Foods every month as well, downtown. But those are a little easier way to get into meeting other security professionals or networking with them. And they also do lockpicking there too, which is pretty cool.
Well, you guys might be also familiar with OWASP. I mean, they're kind of the ones that are sponsoring the LASCON. But OWASP also has meetings once a month at the end of the month in National Instruments. And it's a great way to meet people. They have presentations like this. And then they also have study groups. I think right now one of the books they're going through is the Black Hat Python book. And they're also doing the web hacking hacker's handbook, yeah, which is a great book to look over. But they also have happy hours at Sherlock's once a month. So it's a great way to socialize, meet people that are in the industry. It's also a great opportunity just to get to know them. You never know, they might know about a job and might reference you or something. So it's always a great way to meeting people. And also the ISC squared, they meet once a month, and indeed, you don't have to be certified to go to this meeting, so you can go. And like they also have presentations, and they have free pizza and everything. So something fun to check out.
I think also this afternoon they do have also, it's like at 3 o'clock on the local InfoSec community talk as well. So that should be pretty interesting. Another way to get some good practical experience that's kind of can be quick and dirty and inexpensive or capture the flags. One that we've been playing a lot is Hack the Box. So Hack the Box is awesome. It's just basically, it's kind of like the CTFs that we have here at LASCON. You're basically going to have a point system, and you'll have teams that you can get on with your friends, and you can do collective team rankings. But what's really cool about these are they simulate real-world networks and machines that you may run into, either if you're a defender or if you're on the offense side of things, and you can get experience hacking and attacking them legally, of course, so to speak. And yeah, you don't have to set up like your own home lab, which I will talk about here in a second. But yeah, they're just really good practical experience to get on. And I think there's another one that you like.
Yeah, just comment about Hacking the Box. To get into it, you need to crack the invitation before you can even sign up. So you have to solve a puzzle before you can even start playing with it. Another capture the flag that I like is Over the Wire in Bandit. This is like the first level that you have to do so you can complete. What it has to do is it's just a great way to learn Linux. You basically just have to SSH into the box and find a README file that has a hash for the next level, and the levels get harder and harder as they go, and you start learning new skills. Down here you see the commands that you may need to solve this problem. They kind of give you a little bit of hints. It's like, okay, you might need the ls command or something. So it's a really basic way of learning Linux, and it's a lot of fun.
And it has kittens too. So that was kind of the more practical, very kind of almost quick and dirty way to get experience. And it's cool because you get to keep rankings and stuff. But with that type of mentality I mentioned earlier, with first build it, then you have to break it. I really like home labbing, and home labbing can be a pretty inexpensive way to get hands-on experience, even if you're not involved in IT yet. But one of the foundational aspects of that is the idea of virtualization. So it really helps to have a good understanding of virtualization. And if you're running some type of virtualization product on your desktop, like VMware or VirtualBox, you can have a different experience. I prefer VMware, but you will have to pay a license for that. VirtualBox is awesome too. It's free. Just sometimes the setup is a little different. But I don't want to start, a war between the two. But they definitely have their pros and cons. But I prefer VMware just because it's ease of use for me. Also, if you have a bare metal machine, just a PC, you can also run ESXi. It's free. And it's just something that lets you manage a bunch of virtual machines at once. And so that's a way that you could set up, maybe 4, 8, 12 operating systems and have your own simulated virtual network. And it also has virtual networking included too, so they can all talk to each other, and you can have networking equipment involved in this home lab. The hardware that helps for this, I love that it's pictured the Intel NUC. These run for about $300 or so, and they can get pretty beefy as far as like how much RAM and the space you can get on there, and the processors are always modern. So these are super awesome. What I'll do is I'll get an Intel NUC and just put ESXi on it, and then spin up a bunch of different operating systems and have my own little network there that I can bring up and down. And if you're not familiar with virtualization, there's also the concept of snapshots, where you can take basically a snapshot of that machine in time and save it. So then if you decide to go wreck your computer, you can just spin up that snapshot again or restore to it. So virtualization, super great concept to have in your tool set. But when you're building out that home lab, when you're deciding, okay, I have the hardware, what do I want to do next? The software that's out there for it are things like Metasploitable, which we have at Rapid7, and it's all open source. Is basically something that is just a Linux operating system that has a ton of common and popular vulnerabilities that you'll either run into in a penetration test or you may have on your own network. So Metasploitable is pretty awesome. And then there's also Security Onion, which is kind of like the If you're familiar with Kali Linux, the offensive security distribution, this is like the defensive one for defenders. And there are a lot of defensive tools on there, like an IDSs or log analysis tools or SIEMs, if you're familiar with those, which are basically just log aggregation tools. And also good ideas to build out your own domain controller. I think Microsoft has like student licenses that you can get if you're a student, and you can build out your own domain controller and set up some clients and associate it with that domain controller. And then you can start attacking them, and you can start looking at the traffic with things like a network tap. I have one pictured here. It's a throwing star from Great Scott Gadgets. You can basically hook up Ethernet cables to it and tap the traffic, send it to a distribution like Security Onion, and see your own attacks against these systems in real time. And I think that's a really cool concept to get into, because then you're seeing what's happening not only with your own tools, but you're seeing what it looks like in your logs when you use those tools. And just having that practical hands-on knowledge really helped me, I think, get that kind of homework done at home, rather than having to look at stuff like that on your own network at work when you don't even know what it could look like. And also, it's a great place to play with tools that may crash maybe one of the servers that you're working with a client, and so you can know maybe how dangerous a tool could be. So yeah, it's all super great stuff to get into. And also, if you have a home lab, it's a really good idea to also get like used Cisco equipment off eBay or something like that, and especially if you're interested in the networking side of it, and just get that used networking equipment, set up a switch at home, and you can hook up all your different computers to it. And yeah, it's a great, inexpensive way to get experience. So anything on home labs?
Also, Goodwill is a good place to find stuff like that too. Yeah, good.
Oh, that's you.
Okay. So the Raspberry Pi, I mean, it's a very easy way, inexpensive way of playing with it. You can install Linux on it. You can do so many things. But you could also build your own Pineapple. So it's a good way to play around with things. And it doesn't have to be just hacking or anything. Just, try to make anything that you like and learn the development skills if you don't have them. So it's just a great way of learning things.
Yeah, and to go off of that, one thing that I learned when I was in the NOC position was I got a good hands-on with Linux experience, and one of the things you can do is a Linux from scratch project. And what's awesome about this is you get to build your own custom Linux distribution, compiling your own kernel, and building everything from source. And it's a great way to understand how Linux works. It's a super cool project, and you can get a little Raspberry Pi and spin it up and decide to blow it up when you're done with it. So yeah, I like that. And we'll speak on conferences too, some good conferences to go to, and what we kind of get out of them. We're obviously at a pretty good one here, LASCON. Something that is near and dear to me is DerbyCon. I've been going for the past couple of years. It's in Louisville, Kentucky every fall. And DerbyCon is about 2,000 people or so. But what's really good about DerbyCon is it's a very kind of intimate, very social conference. Iron Geek does a really good job of recording all the talks and getting them up pretty quickly the same day of. So you don't have to go sit in talks all day. You can also socialize with a lot of people that are very active in the security community. There's a thing known as LobbyCon at DerbyCon, where everyone just hangs out in the lobby outside of the talks all day. So that's something that I really enjoy. There's also B-Sides. So B-Sides is really, and depending on what city you're in, B-Sides can have a different kind of crowd. Like in Augusta, Georgia, every year, that's the same week, and they have a Security Onion conference. So you have a lot of blue team defenders in Augusta at that time for B-Sides. Here in Austin, we have pretty offensive-minded security, so you get a lot of offensive security professionals. So depending on where you are, B-Sides is another great conference to get into. And it's named as derived as kind of the B-side of a tape, because DEF CON talks were getting so big, and so people started to basically hold their own conferences locally to be able to speak and get out. And so, yeah, B-Sides are awesome. Do you want to talk on some of the other ones?
So Black Hat is more for the C-level, but it's also a great conference to go to if you're looking for a job. They have a lot of booths and everything. You can get a lot of information. You can even do interviews there. Black Hat is the week before DEF CON in Las Vegas, and then obviously DEF CON is in Las Vegas also. And they're really different conferences. One is really more formal, and that would be Black Hat's more formal and everything. DEF CON could be a big mess if you've ever been. But it is a great conference to go. they have so many different talks. They have villages if you're interested in Wi-Fi, or if you're interested in physical or lock picking. They have so many different villages. And one thing that I do recommend is, even though you might want to go to every single talk, you should take some time to go and to see the capture the flag stuff, or just try to be social and get to know people. It's a great way to just get connections and do networking. So don't miss that opportunity. DEF CON and all these conferences also have them up on YouTube. They take a lot longer than DerbyCon for sure, but you still can see them later.
I think that's about it. And then, yeah, so some of the additional resources that we really enjoy, our podcasts are a great way to get experience and knowledge in security, realm. Paul Security Weekly is a great resource. I'll do this in my commute, basically, just fire it up. It's very good, especially if you're on the defense side of things. They do a good job covering both sides, but they do also news of that week. And the longer podcasts, we go in there and do an interview of people, so you can go through the back transcripts and look at people that have talked, and if that, you like that talk, it's great resources to catch up on certain areas. And then I think you're a big fan of Risky Business, right?
Yeah, so Risky Business is also another weekly podcast. It's about an hour. They do just things that have been going on that week about news, and they also interview people, security experts in certain fields. But yeah, it's a great way to, if you have to deal with traffic, might as well just, listen to it.
And then as far as getting into news and new information about security, Twitter is probably like hands down, for better or worse, the best resource out there for information security knowledge. And yeah, I really like Twitter because you'll find things that, like someone's working on their project in GitHub, they'll usually talk about it on there first or get ideas from people. A lot of security things, like there's a vulnerability that just came out or new exploits. Twitter sometimes a place that you'll find that immediately. Also on Reddit, there's rnetsec. It's very kind of research focused, a lot of their topics. But what I really like about it is when I first got into security, I was like made it to goal to understand every post on there, because all of them are very like technically deep, or at least get an idea of what they're talking about. So yeah, I like Reddit's rnetsec subreddit, but it can sometimes be a bit, I guess, intimidating with its topics on there. But I'm pretty sure that like half the people that read it don't get it as well, so like me. But yeah, it's still a great resource. Job hunting. So hopefully a lot of the kind of things that we've been talking about can help give you an idea about the technical, social resources, so that when you do have that first job hunting interview, you can be pretty prepared for it. So they're the typical resources to go find jobs, like on LinkedIn, Indeed. I was talking about the NetSec subreddit. They also have a quarterly hiring thread as well. And so you can go on there and look at people, what their positions are and what have you. And then, yeah, so it's that. Those are really good ways to get your kind of idea of what a security job may be. And when you are in these sites searching for positions, a security consultant will usually be an offensive-minded position, but it can also be defense as well. And if you're looking on there and you type in like security analyst, that's a very super broad position, but a lot of times it'll also be like the defense side of things. So definitely take a look at those job descriptions and get an idea of what each one may be, depending on what you're looking for.
Something to consider before even looking for a company is sometimes we've been in the field doing other things like QA or IT or development, but something to consider is, are you willing to maybe go into an entry-level position, because it might be a pay cut, and so it just has to be, are you willing to do it? Because sometimes like the golden handcuffs, we get to a level where we're seniors in our current position, and then we kind of have to go to entry level, and sometimes it kind of sucks, but that's what you have to do. Also, look for the company, what you think the right fit is. It's like, do you want like a relaxed culture, or are they going to be more like kind of corporate jobs, or are they consulting? You have to talk to customers. You don't want to do that, or just things like that. Also, look for companies that maybe have like entry-level groups. Like, for example, Rapid7 has this security analyst group where they get people from different backgrounds, like development, QA, blue teams, and they know they you might not have the security background, but you can bring a different perspective to the team. So something like that is also like a really great thing to look for.
Yeah, and so also when you kind of find that job and you hopefully go in for an interview, we were thinking about some of the things that are questions, not just that you may be asked, but also things to ask the person that's interviewing you. So a good kind of question to think of is that maybe asked in your current role, what would you want to know now that you didn't before getting into it? And just kind of get an idea of, asking them about their current position and how, do they actually like it there? But on the flip side of that, also, anything on your resume is obviously going to be fair game. So be proficient if you do list it on your resume that you do know it. And really, things like that are going to be, your time to shine. And so definitely, tell your story and use examples of the things that we kind of were talking about earlier. Have that kind of drive and passion, and develop these home labs, and get into the social side of things because you may be asked about it eventually. So yeah.
Something also to remember is the technical interviews. They'll probably have an integral. So it just depends on what kind of position is. But for example, sometimes Rapid7 for the security analyst, they'll have like a capture the flag that you have to solve and you have to report on before you get hired. So it's just something like use those things, the points that we mentioned earlier. Like they're gonna ask you, do you have a home lab? They want to know that you are passionate about it and are willing to learn and put the extra effort.
Contact info time. So yeah, definitely feel free to reach out with us if you have any questions on this or had any questions about any of the resources. I'm on Twitter as well, so you can go look at my ridiculous list of people I follow if you're interested in that sphere to look into. So, I think we have time for questions as well. So, do you have any questions? Yes, Fanny.
So what are some things, or what is the number one thing that you wish you knew before you started your transition?
My transition to my current role now as a pen tester. So I wish that I knew. So I was from a defense side of things, and that idea, everyone is like a customer to us. Every department is, and I moved into the consulting role. And in the consulting role, it's just very different because you'll have a new client, maybe a couple clients a week and different calls. And so you're going to be running into different companies all the time. And it gave me a lot of anxiety because of the transition of that was such a rapid pace of change. And, you work with a client and you may see them every year or not. But the consulting mindset of where you're going in and, doing the best job you can and doing a report and then moving on, that for me kind of was a new experience. Transitioning to that is very unusual. I think if you started out in consulting and were used to that now, that way of thinking, it would just come naturally. But to me, I had to adjust, I think, to the rapid pace of moving through clients all the time because I don't interact often with other departments at my company because I'm not having to make sure that check their security. I'm doing it for another company. So I think that was something I wish I knew it was going to be a difficult experience getting into it just with that mindset flip. Gisela, what did you have?
For me, it would be how social it would be. I'm kind of an introvert, so I was pretty amazed how social the people are, for sure.
We can be a bit overwhelmingly friendly. So, do we have any other questions? Yes.
So you talked about your past experiences. How did you know you were ready to make the switch to security from wherever you were? Like you can do all these things, you can build a home lab or whatever, but at some point you're like, okay, now I need to start applying for jobs. What was that like for you?
That's a really good question, actually. Thank you. For me, I actually had a friend that went over to our security department from where I was in the NOC, and I got to see a lot of the cool things they were doing. I went in as an entry-level position, and I just basically studied up for it. I don't know if I was even really technically as ready as, looking back on it, as I could have been. Just it was because I didn't realize, I think, how much there was to learn and get into it. And so fortunately I did get in at an entry level position. And I don't think, I didn't think I was ready for it. In the first week, I actually got into that, into my team. They sent me to DEF CON, and like the lights came on in my head, and I was like, all these amazing things I could do. And yeah, I really grew up in that role. And yeah, Gisela, what was it like for you?
I just got tired of doing what I was doing. I wasn't happy anymore, and I just decided to follow my passion. So, yeah, I think in this kind of position, since you are going to go into entry level, the sooner you do it, the better. And I mean, you don't have to just quit your job and start looking for positions and studying and stuff. But, just take your own at your own time. Feel comfortable with the topics that you might be asked about.
Do we have any other questions? Bueller? No one?
Bueller.
All right. Well, yeah, on that, we'll go ahead and end it a bit early. Thank you, everyone, for coming out to this talk. And feel free to come up and talk to us in person if you have any questions that you don't want to yell at a room about. So, yeah, thank you, everyone.